the stuff that's running, it just kept running. The stuff that's been going down, it's just kept going down. Generally, this sort of consolidation of the high does favour a bit of a move up. Definitely saw clear signs of buying the dips there previously.
What's it doing?
Yes. Oh, it just hasn't shown any weakness, but it's been probably by far actually the strongest industry there. That's the norm for election years, is to have the pullbacks there, just not to have large ones there. Maybe we get a little excited here into the September rate cut. We actually don't get too many IPOs that look like this, Chris.
US market has the interest rates coming down. Australia, not in the foreseeable future. That has implications on the FX, the share market, and the individual trading opportunities that we have. Gary Glover is unpacking the indices that he does on his weekly report, as well as the best opportunities on the ASX. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Good, Chris.
Well, freezing cold times that we've had in Melbourne. If you include the wind chill factor in negatives, Australia or Sydney had some very strong winds. So cold times, but the market, the indices, what have we got?
It's funny, obviously pretty warm, Sydney and Queensland are pretty cold. I think Melbourne, South Australia and Tassie there, so you sort of almost got two halves of the market. So it's pretty similar to the share market at the moment. The stuff that's running, it just kept running. The stuff that's been going down, it's just kept going down. So it's a weird market here, you normally see a little bit more range-bound activity, switching back and forth there, but it's definitely a very market-driven market at the moment. So things that are hot and overpriced there continue to get more overpriced, and the things that are probably heading down looking value orientated are getting even more value. So it's but yeah, the Nasdaq's pretty robust there. I think it's a pretty good sign here, just bouncing back above the 50% of the range. So I've had a really quick sat back there. I think I said last week, I would expect us to sort of consolidate for a couple of weeks there. So you might even get a bit more consolidation there, but I've noticed that the S&P is tightening up right underneath the old high there, and that's oftentimes a bit of a sign of strength there, Chris. That's sort of I think that's the one. David Ryan there, sort of a momentum trader, he looks for stocks that sort of do this setup, but oftentimes they do break up here. But saying that, I've seen a couple, I think CSL might have done something recently and looks like it might be breaking down, so maybe you can still break down sometimes. But yeah, it does still, generally this sort of consolidation of the high does favour a bit of a move up here. And with the Fed likely to cut rates here in the middle of September, then, I just think we're going to be kind of buoyed till then. Wouldn't surprise me if we saw the market run up into that rate cut and then maybe peel back after that. So, yeah, because that's the point where everyone will get really excited that rates are coming up and there'll be a rate for equities, and then the market will do something, do what's least expected, and then maybe pull back and catch everyone sort of napping that sort of when they think it's going to take off. But yeah, we'll see. See how it plays out here. But look, the market's pretty buoyant. We're back above the 50. I think the 10 and the 20 on moving average there. So pretty firm sort of setup here. So it's definitely showing strength there, not weakness. So I think the market's likely to stay reasonably sort of buoyant. Into that sort of rate cut, I think.
Well, if that's the S&P 500, obviously the US, they're looking to cut the rates, and as you're saying, positives for markets. The Aussie, we've had that rhetoric. We've had different rhetoric, I should say, in that, well, we might have to wear the pain for a bit longer. And the conversation was not about cut or holding. It was a hold or a rise. The commentary is a little bit old now. We are expecting a new minutes coming up soon. But we've still got the market. You just noticed on the S&P 500 kind of holding just under the highs within that sort of status box type thing that you'd highlighted. The Aussie's just edging higher. So is this kind of that two-speed kind of component you're talking about, running hot in some areas, running cold in others? And how's that impacting the indices that you've got here on the chart?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty positive price action there for the XJO there. Where when you consider how much weighting there is in materials, and the fact that we're seeing the iron ore price and lithium price really show a lot of weakness in the last couple of months there. So we've seen a lot of those stocks really sort of peel back here. So it's pretty encouraging that the index has been able to sort of push high here. So, but we definitely saw clear signs of buying the dips there previously. But yeah, we've had a nice recovery out of that. I think it'll be a bit messy here. Still think it'll be, I still feel like, I mean, the banks are so expensive here, Chris. I just, yeah, I mean, that's just crazy to me. I know we're talking about momentum there, obviously driving the markets there, but there's definitely no value in that sector for mine there. There are the other sectors that are, showing a bit of value. So, but yeah, I think you're just probably going to see a bit more rotation in it. So, that's why I think the market will be a little bit messy here. I think eventually the banks will probably pull back here. And maybe materials will balance there. So that'll sort of just keep the market sort of maybe a little another sideways consolidation there. But look, still pretty constructive overall. Just might be a little messy here. That's the way I look at it.
Well, messy is not necessarily a bad situation. I know in the last couple of weeks you said you've had some good trading opportunities. A lot of shorter term traders have had a bit of pain in the last week or so. So it really depends on how you're looking at the market and the opportunities, which we'll look at those trading shares in a second. But just want to check in with the Dow Jones, back to the US. This is a different chart, mostly because what's happened here, Gary? What's going on? What's it doing?
Yes. Oh, it just hasn't shown any weakness, but it's been probably by far actually the strongest industry there. Hasn't had much of a pullback at all. So I mean the S&P and the Nasdaq had a bit larger pullback there, but this really hasn't there. So so definitely been pretty robust there so far. You've gone to near highs there after that pullback. So I thought breaking out of that sort of sideways orientation was actually that was a bit of a sign of strength when it really did break out of there, even though it sort of came back in. But yeah, but no weakness here so far. So again, you might get some sort of consolidation here, but still is in a pretty strong posse. I mean, maybe we consolidate back down the bottom of that little channel and then get back up again. So, still got sort of pretty positive sort of cycleways into the end of the year, but I still think we do often get a little bit of a consolidation, a little bit of weakness in that sort of often in that September, October. So they're often the months sort of synonymous with a little bit of a pullback in markets. So, I think I sort of put a chart up there last week, Chris, which was the 10-year versus the 60-year. I sort of feel like we're trading more like that 10-year at the moment. So I'll just watch how that just because it's sort of been really, really strong here, it hasn't shown much weakness at all. So, so I think as the market gets a little bit too aggressive here into that September sort of rate cut, I'd just be wary of a pullback into that. So yeah, you might just get a little release, rather than anything too big. I don't think the one thing about the election years, you don't typically get too big corrections there. We're seeing sort of maybe like 6.5 and maybe an 8% correction or something in the Nasdaq side. So not too big corrections. They're pretty small ones. So that's the norm for election years is to have the pullbacks there, just not to have large ones there. So maybe we get a little excited here into the September rate cut, and maybe we pull back when everyone thinks we're going to take off. But it'll just probably be another kind of measured sort of pullback, and then we might sort of run into the end of the year, and then we'll have the US election to deal with. That always sort of throws up a little bit of volatility around that first weekend of. But typically markets have a habit of finishing pretty strong into the year, even if they don't get the incumbent they want. It's sort of normally the election, you sort of get a bit of uncertainty running into the election, and then coming out of the election you've got more certainty. So certainly in terms of whether you like that certainty or not, that certainty that does tend to sort of support markets a lot of the time.
Well, it becomes investable information, right? The glass ceiling is the uncertainty of who's going to win the election.
Yeah.
I remember, was it Obamacare? And then the healthcare companies were able to benefit that. They became investable insights and informations to then drive that higher. Their weighting snowballs. So is that kind of the uncertainty that we have coming into the election? We're not having huge runaway movements because they don't know which industry is going to take a huge opportunity or not. But once it is, then you can really get the capital behind it, and management can really deploy their capital. So you said the uncertainties about elections, isn't it?
Yeah. No, so I think people get scared by it. They'll get behind the reins there all the time. But equity markets and the election year cycle sort of, they suggest it doesn't really matter who gets in. It's once the uncertainty's taken away, the equity markets just sort of tend to deal with it. So but I guess there'll be, as you say, there'll be winners and losers out of in each segment. So the segments are probably more important, I guess, coming out of that election.
Well, what you do is you look into the next layer of the market, looking beyond the segments to find the right trading opportunities. Clinuvel, that's in this week's report. CUVL is a ticker. It's not the first time we've seen this company in your report, and also it has been a darling before for traders. What's happening in this company, and do you care to share with us what this, I'm guessing it's 23 weeks that you've highlighted here. So what's happening here in Clinuvel?
Yeah, look, it's just gone really sideways there since October of last year, Chris, really. So it's had a few little runs there, but really sort of couldn't get out of it, So I think it sort of came down. Had like a half year low. I thought that was sort of, there's going to be some sort of timing there sort of early in the year, but had a few little runs there, but sort of couldn't get going. I think it had a reasonable update and then got a bit of a check on the way back here. But, if we go back to sort of what early 22 there, so I think that 13.16 low there, we did see a reasonable rally, obviously up to $28, $29. Then it's come back and retested that low. So basically made a false break as well. So it did go marginally lower. Now it's sort of come back and made this looks like it could be the first high low post that sort of false break as well. So oftentimes when you get a false break, you can get a fast move back up there. So with that sort of marginal new low there, looking for a marginal new high of the last low, which is around $29. Pretty far away. So it looks, that looks too far away. But this company does have a pretty good growth trajectory there the next few years. So I thought it's an interesting sort of biotech there. It's actually a really well managed, quite profitable biotech. So it's unlike a lot of them there that's sort of quite lumpy or have really growth, or some others that leak a lot of money. They're really sort of quite sort of fiscally, but it probably has kept a dampener on growth there for a while. This one as well. So I think it's about 4 or 5 years of sort of strong sort of profit growth there, but just always been sort of really managed pretty tightly. But I think, this looks like the management now sort of, I thought it was probably one of the best annual reports they put out there, and did make some sort of larger growth assumptions too, which they just haven't typically made in the past. They just sort of replied on good management, keeping it nice and tight, thinking their product will sort of grow there. But I do think this has got a nice growth run rate there. It's only about 21 times earnings too, Chris, as well. So it's a company that's pretty well managed, very profitable. Got a pretty strong revenue line there, and I think it's got probably a decent growth perspective in the next couple of years. Definitely one to sort of keep an eye on. I think this one can be set for a larger move there. I think most brokers have sort of got between 19 to sort of, there's a few brokers, I think one or two's got a $30 target. They're a little bit out of market, but I think most of them are sort of sitting in that sort of 19 to 21 sort of broker target there. So, but I think this is one to keep an eye on here. So I think it's might be sort of its time to sort of get going here. So I do like this one here. I think, I know they're different sort of stocks here, but there's plenty of stocks with no growth trading on sort of 20 or above PEs there, whereas this thing's been growing quite nicely here for 4 or 5 years, only trading on that 21 times, which is pretty cheap for a growth stock. Do think they're sort of what they call their photo cosmetics has really got a potential growth runway for the next for 26, 27 could be really really strong growth there. So I think this one's interesting. Has been disappointing for me in the past. I've sort of been hanging on to a decent parcel there, and it hasn't done too much over that period. So it's been quite disappointing. But I still think this one's got some potential there.
Right. Well, a different space, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, Credit Corp. Credit Corp, what's happening here? particularly in this channel and these numbers that you've got. So we're going for a 0, 1, 2, 3 bottom.
Yeah, very different stock there. Like, it has updated here recently. The market did like the update. Did talk about a pretty strong pipeline of after 25 as well. So I thought that was a pretty good sign there for Credit Corp. Everyone's been a bit worried about the credit markets. Haven't been particularly buoyant there with all the free money being given out by central banks and governments there. Debtor books haven't really been that active, but I think with bankruptcies and starting to increase here, then the debt books are starting to that space is sort of growing here. So good signs there for Credit Corp. I think this is on a reasonable multiple here. The yields over 4% from memory there. So, but yeah, I think there's some runway there, and it has been the leader in the past there, Chris, in this space. So I think this is in a pretty well placed position now. Again, like most of the broker recommendations, might get going at $19-20 here on this one. So, do like the fact that it's made this nice base here, use up plenty of time here. Just made a sequence of sort of 3 high lows here now. So I think it's in a reasonable position to get going here. I have added a parcel there, and I think if it breaks above sort of 16, I might even add to that parcel there. But just wanting to see a bit more momentum here. But do like the signs there.
Well, Credit Corp moving over to Select Harvest, they do ride the wave of whether feast and famine and strong tailwinds or coming down, can be exposed to agricultural and seasonal movements, and that is what happens. They seem to be just stuck under this almost $4.50 ceiling that you've highlighted here in the charts. What would you want to see from it? Like, how do you get from being under that ceiling? What kind of indicators would you be looking for to see it burst through it?
Yeah, I just noticed a few of those ag stocks have actually had a pretty good run here. Even things like sort of Bega and stuff have sort of popped up here recently as well. So I just noticed here that the whole thing's sort of tightening up here, Chris. It's sort of had a pretty good rally off that low, pull back on sort of lighter volumes, had a reasonably robust rally back up to that 450 zone. And then the thing that really jumped out at me is the last probably 5 or 6 weeks, it pulled back here on absolutely no volumes, not much selling going on. It's a really, really light race from there. So just sort of starting to a few high lows building in there. Just like the fact that we're not seeing very passive selling here so far. So I think if it sort of can turn up here, break out of this little VCP and out of this little range there, then I think once it gets going here, potentially might break that 450 zone, then really kick on there. So, but I do like the signs there. But yeah, I think breaking above that sort of 525 zone, that'll be a bit of a confirmation there. So that little VCP in there, and that on the daily there, that'll be one of the sort of swing highs broken there. So that sort of, I think it looks pretty good. Looks a pretty good setup. Now the almond price has been pretty robust. I know that California almonds have been, they've definitely produced a lot, but demand has risen a lot as well. So with almonds are very popular, being one of the sort of healthier nuts, and also almond milk has been a really big swing in that. So I think although almond production is up, almond demand is pretty robust as well. So just I think this is in a pretty good place actually. So looks pretty interesting.
Right, well, demand outstripping supply, even with growing supply. Sure, it's happy times for Select Harvest ahead. Vulcan Energy, different one in this week's report. So geothermal energy and lithium group. You mentioned at the top of the show, lithium prices haven't been doing so well. Iron ore's taken a fair bit of a hit. That does drag the indices down a bit, but they've still been carrying it higher based off the back of the bags. This one's further down the layers, market capitalization, but trading opportunity and potential upside could be pretty big for this one. How would you see this setting up in this geothermal lithium space? What do you want to see from Vulcan?
Yeah, it's just sort of trying to do a lot of that green energy there, Chris, as well. So look, some of the stocks have been good in that area. Other stocks have been, like this, I think one is CXL, which has been, it's had a terrible downtrend for a long time here. So a bit of a mixed bag in that sort of green energy space there. But this one's pretty interesting. They've sort of got a few, I know, sort of CIMIC and Hancock, sort of mining interests have sort of got on board here. So some pretty there's some pretty decent partners on this program there. So look, it has had a bit of a run previously, but has had a nice pullback here now, and the whole thing's sort of tightening up here, just on top of that that old high there. So might be just around about 380, just below $4 there. So do like this, the tightening price action sitting on top of that previous high, just really sort of key level there. And again, we've had some pretty good volume on that rally on the way up, and then just recently the volume's dried up on the pullback there. So this leaves it sort of a little tightening sort of setup there. Again, you've seen a few VCPs, this one here, but just love that sort of tight price action sitting on top of the previous high there. This leaves it in a pretty interesting. Yeah, I think there might be some earnings, or I think they do report here in the next week or so there. So that'll be probably quite pivotal there. But yeah, I think the price action looks pretty encouraging, even though maybe the lithium sector not so good. But I think these guys are more focused in that in the energy side there. So yeah, this pretty interesting actually. So definitely want to watch in the next week here. So I haven't positioned here. I haven't looked at it there. I just love the price action there, but just looking for some sort of confirmation there. We definitely need to sort of see it kick up here and a bit of volume there to show that. Otherwise, if it breaks low from here, you definitely don't want to be playing it for sure.
Okay, so tight stops, but possibly looking for some sort of catalyst on the chart. If we move to,
I think there you've seen just sort of signs of accumulation taking place, and you've definitely broken that little descending wedge on the bigger scale there. So you do sort of have the remnants of a sort of a larger base starting to build here. So we do have a few high lows there. We're definitely seeing look how many weeks on the way down here. So what's that? 8 weeks down, and it's hardly moved. Really. So it's been So it's been a bit of a grind, and then no volume as well. So that's normally a really corrective sort of pullback here. So not a lot of selling there. Taking a long time to move lower here. This leaves it in a pretty interesting sort of spot here. So yeah.
Well, another one in a different space is Block once again, SQ2 Square, the ticker SQ2. Well, it's been tighter. What's been happening is these ranges have been significantly tighter than what we had, moving from 130 down towards 90 over sort of a 6-7 week period. Now we've had about 6 weeks of churning between 97, 101, that kind of area. What does that mean to you, and what's the next step for Block?
Yeah, just seeing the sector's been pretty robust, Chris, as well. So seeing like Hum's been strong, Zip, just a lot of these sort of in that online payment space there has been pretty robust there. So obviously Tyro, which we're going to show next, has been pretty buoyant as well, had a really good result. So there's been some good numbers sort of coming through there. So Square's on a pretty reasonably low multiple there as well. It's around about 11 times there. So it is odd for a growth stock like Square to be trading on such a low multiple, but do love a little tightening up here. Have sort of added to a little parcel there around 90, just under 95. But yeah, I do like the tight little price action there, and just a daily sort of showing, that price is tightening up. So thing if it sort of breaks above this last little swing high there around about 100, that'll be positive as well. So I think it's really one to watch here. I think it looks, it's a reasonable value there, but I'm just because it is a little loose, has been moving around a little bit. We'd like to sort of see price action be a little tighter here, but yeah, it's definitely one that I probably, if I see a bit more strength there, might add to it. Because I think there's potential sort of good opportunity there.
Well, one Tyro you just talked about has been tighter. So you're talking about wider and loose losers, tight winners. It was wider. They just seem to be getting tighter and tighter. The range is smaller. And then even though it did eventually break out, it was after a fair bit of consolidation just under that overhead wedge line.
Yeah.
And then pops out and then gaps up on Monday. Didn't close the week, didn't close that weekly session right up near the highs, closed back towards where it opened, but still it is up for the week with huge volume. What's your interpretation of this sort of movement at this critical part of the wedge?
Yeah, look, the report was taken pretty well. It was a pretty good report there. Obviously, the stock did jump up a bit there. It just had a bit of a retreat, obviously, on the back of the jump. So maybe because, so far no one's really got set on that as well. So sometimes, like if there's you do get that sort of big move, you can sort of see the the footprints in the sand. There's sort of, some of the volume already, accumulation starting to take. So you definitely saw the volume tick up a little bit down at the last low there, but it had been sort of, we're kind of on that pullback there, particularly the tight part there, the volume had been pretty light in there. So, but I think it looks pretty good here. We're sort of broken a swing high, we've broken out of that range as well. Had a pretty good update. The sector is pretty buoyant as well. So signs are pretty positive there. I sort of did gap through one of my entry levels there, so I've only sort of just added a small parcel here. There's one that I sort of think if it does sort of consolidate here, does sort of show signs this week, I probably would add to it there. But I think, again, the sector looks pretty, a lot of the names are showing a lot of strength in the sector here, so I think that's a good sign here. So, but yeah, I think it's sort of one that if it shows a bit more strength, then I'll probably add to it.
Nice. Well, the last one on the report, Light and Wonder, LNW, cross-platform gaming company. So always a good thing to see gaming companies in there. They can shoot lights out. Now, this is interesting. We're looking at a chart here that's in a very different position to what you've looked at on most of the other charts. And they're right up, you talk about the top half of the chart. So if we break it on the horizontal line, it's in the top half.
Kind of reminds me of the zero chart too. I mean, zero looks very similar to this as well. It's sort of showing that just being, climbing steadily pretty much the last sort of half here. So, so just each pullback getting shallower and shallower. The whole thing's tightening up under the high here. So looks pretty positive. There was a little bit of selling off that little false break of the high there. That was one little negative, but you haven't seen any follow through. So sometimes when you see selling, if you only sort of see that 1 week of selling, you don't see the follow through, then it can sort of time up here. So last couple of weeks, the volume's been a bit lighter, but that's sort of more of a sideways orientation there. But leaves the stock in a pretty strong position here. It just hasn't really weakened off here too much. And, the sort of, as we tighten up underneath that old high, push through there, we might have a bit of a breakout there. So like zero, very similar there. And it's had a few little sell downs there where you thought I might have sold off a little bit, but it's had no follow through on the selling at all and just kept sort of climbing high there. So this does look, it is obviously in that growth area. Obviously growth stocks are trading pretty well at the moment. So just not showing much weakness here. This looks pretty buoyant. You saw some pretty heavy volume too, sort of, through that sort of May to June period as well. That's coming off that last low. That's pretty robust volume through there. So that was sort of, signs of accumulation on that dip there all the way through there. So I think it leaves it in a pretty strong position overall.
And just quickly asking about this chart, it's zoomed in a little bit more than the others. Is that because you want to focus in on the performance in the top right-hand corner, or is there, it's not a recent listing, is it?
That isn't a recent listing, yeah. So that's all the history there is. So yeah. So so it is a newer name actually, Light Wonder. But so that, it's been pretty robust since the get go of the stock here. So been a pretty strong stock. Been a very strong performer there. I mean, even on the little last thing on the chart too, that sort of November high, that pullback is just sat on top of that high as well, Chris, as well. So we're about that green line, and so that whole thing is just set on top of that previous high there. So it's, that's pretty constructive. Just from a trend point of view, when you sort of pull back and sit on top of the old high there, that's key support, and then that's normally means you're sort of going to go to a new high. So in fact, this hasn't shown too much weakness here so far. It leaves the stock in a pretty strong position.
Now, just before we go, you've done a fair bit of research into IPOs, and there's a reason why you look at IPOs, and you've just paralleled us towards zero. So what is it about IPOs having this sort of strong characteristic? What are we, sort of over a year into their life?
Yeah.
Why is a year important, and why is being in this part of the chart important? And then why is it important to look at things like zero? Can you put those three together for us?
Yeah, well, we actually don't get too many IPOs that look like this, because most of our IPOs, they sort of come on at a height have a bit of action for a month, and then they tend to fade, and the news dries up. They'll usually come back and retest I think around about 80% will come back and undercut the low, or I think 80% come back under the issue price as well. You're real hot, so and then maybe they start building from there. But this has just come out of the gates pretty buoyant the whole time here. So in the US, there's some of it we see a few IPOs like this, some of the stronger names, but it's been pretty consistently sort of the whole time here. So yeah, it's just not showing any signs of weakness at all, Chris. So it's been pretty buoyant then. So I mean, it's close to 2 years, so it's not it's a short period of time here. But I guess the lack of volatility there is actually probably a good sign for the stock here. Just when sometimes we sort of see these sort of stronger names just slow and steady decline, over the years there. So, I like the fact that it's not too erratic, that sort of spends climbing sort of steadily here. So, definitely view that as a pretty strong sign there.
Well, strong signs from good opportunities, rare opportunities, having IPOs, solid ones on the market, and also covering the insights of the indices and the best trading shares for the week. We say thank you, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.
Gary talked about momentum shares and companies in the top right. We'll put on screen last look in on Friday with the top momentum leaders and the launchpad leaders there.